Hi guys, this talk will be in English, so let me introduce our next speaker, Natal Dank, and we talk about how to solve real business problems with agile learning and development. Hi Natal.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine, thanks. So let's start.
Okay, great, excellent. Well, fabulous to be here. Thank you so much. I'm in Scotland today and the sun is still rising, so I'd love to hear where you are today. So please drop me a message and let me know where you're dialing in from. So what we wanted to talk about today is how are you using the Agile mindset and techniques that links to that world, such as design thinking, human-centered design, and really evidence-based work. So understanding the problem you're trying to solve and how we build that for the new world that we're now living in and essentially solve real business problems with Agile thinking. Fantastic to see we've got a couple of people from Ukraine, lovely, and we've got a New Zealander, and it's dark now, I could imagine, definitely. Fantastic to see you, nice to meet you. All right. So a lot of the themes at this conference will be around the new working paradigm that really had been developing for quite a while, but with the onset of the pandemic, for want of using a word that's used a lot at the moment, has really accelerated the developments that we're seeing. And Agile thinking and what we often call the mindset is increasingly seen as a way to find answers in this new working paradigm. So Agile itself is not necessarily the answer, but it helps us build solutions that really enable our people to be great at what they do, and therefore our business to innovate and deliver value to the end customer. And that's what it's all about. So if you think about the businesses that you're working in, we're needing to innovate. We're needing to deliver value to our customer in new ways at speed. We need to digitalize what we do. So the pandemic has not only opened up that we have to digitalize the working environment so people can keep getting the work done in this new way, but also the customer experience is dramatically shifting to a more digital experience. And with this comes new ways of working. And for around 20 years now, Agile as a collaborative way of working has started to influence organizations as they try and find answers to these challenges. And we know that brings in a new way of working. It brings in a more networked, team-based way of working. And it really looks at how do we make real-time decisions at the need of the customer. With this brings a whole kind of demand for a different way of doing our people practices. And I come from the world of HR and I understand the legacy that we're often trying to undo just as much as what we're trying to build to meet these challenges. So we really are starting to build HR and learning development for a new working paradigm. And therefore, we can't just copy and paste what we've done before. And that's going to be my theme of this session. How do we really go and understand the problem we're trying to solve and use Agile thinking to actually help us co-create great learning and development practices in our organization? But what I talk about today will resonate with everyone in HR and will really help you understand how you just build people practice generally. It will also help anyone that works in the people space. So culture, change, people leaders, anything like that. You can use these principles to really get great results. Okay. So I've mentioned already that Agile is truly a mindset, and you will be exploring that a lot in this program and this conference. But ultimately, it puts your customer, which for us is our people and our business, at the center of what we do. And it looks at how do you deliver value to that customer in a more incremental way. And this is quite a different word and a different way of working for people in learning and development and HR. So I'm going to explore what this means. How do we deliver value in slices, piece by piece, and build the solution up so we're delivering value early and often throughout the business? It also means that we work in a more team-based way, more collaborative way, because it says we can't solve big, complex problems by ourselves. We need a team of great cross-functional people to get it done. This is also really different for the way that HR has worked up until now. We've often been single topic owners. So I look after awards, someone else looks after learning, someone else looks after talent. However, our problems are very complex and we need to solve them together. We also need to solve them very closely with the business. And so Agile as a way of working helps us achieve these aims. But it does feel quite different in the world of HR when we first start to embrace it. But the results are astounding, and that's what I want to talk about today. So the theme that I'd like you to take away is that we need to design for moments that matter. So rather than the good old copy and paste, which is what we've often seen in the profession up until now. And that's not a criticism, it's more of a legacy of how we've worked. So a great example is yesterday, I was working with a team and we were looking at what does personal growth mean for their business? And they were doing this for their strategy of 2021. And they said, oh, we've got a problem with career development in our organization. We think we're losing people too early, or people talk about not knowing what role they can go into. Also, they work in an agile way, and we're not as hierarchical as we used to be. So the next promotion isn't always the manager role, and people therefore don't know how to develop their career. However, when we started to look into that topic, first of all, we realized that the way people define personal development was so different across the organization. And so we needed to understand the problem in a better way. But also, up until then, a lot of the solutions for learning had really reflected what had come before or what had worked in other organizations. So, for example, one of them was this learning hub where people could go and access programs and courses and traditionally go and attend a face-to-face program. But all of this meant that the learning was outside the flow of work. So it was separate to how people were getting the job done. And it wasn't linked to helping them be better directly in their job. And so we saw that there's opportunities of bringing the two so much closer together. But this was a really complex problem. And so what we realized is that we couldn't approach it with our more traditional ways of working and our traditional thinking. And that's what Agile really offers people in learning, HR, culture, and change. It helps you solve complex problems. So what is growth mindset? That is complex. How do you find the answers? How do you develop leaders of the future for roles you don't know about yet? That is complex. How do you help teams develop and collaborate more effectively and look at all the different dynamics that humans bring to a team? That is complex. And with these complex problems, working in an agile way, a more emergent way, allows you to work in an evidence-based way and get much better results. And this is what's happening in business. So business are wanting to innovate. They're wanting to deliver value to their end customer in a new way. And so they're going to Agile to help them find the answers. And HR and learning and development, we can do this too. Also, if this is the new working paradigm, if this is how our organizations are developing and transforming, then we really need to understand not just how this works, so how Agile looks and feels personally, but we need to link into it. All our solutions need to enable Agile to happen across the organization. So that's what we're going to explore in the next 20 minutes. And we're going to look particularly at a group of design principles that I've learnt over the years really help you design and deliver fantastic learning solutions, but in particular, help you solve real business problems. And that's what this is about. So my name is Natal Dank. I am the co-founder of PXO Culture, and PXO stands for People, Experience and Operations. And I look at what is modern HR, learning, culture, and change. How do we do this in a modern way? How do we build a portfolio of fantastic products and services that essentially allows you to deliver a great people experience across your organization? And we see the people experience similar to how you see the customer experience. So it is a journey of how you take people through the life cycle of how they work in your organization, how you engage them in moments that matter, that truly change their career and their direction, but also how do you then stay in touch? So when they're not working with your organization, they potentially come back in the future, or they're a great brand advocate for what you're doing. Okay. So I'll just check that everything's still going, because it's stopped counting down. So I will watch my own clock and make sure that we're all on time. Okay, so what we're going to look at comes very much from the book that is now out, which is Agile HR. And at PXO Culture, we do a whole range of digital learning and coaching. And in particular, we really look at how do we activate your teams in Agile. So particularly your learning and development, your HR teams, how do we really build on the skills and techniques that I'm talking about today and really get some of these solutions happening in your organization. Okay, so throughout this, I'm going to talk about some examples of what's happening in workplaces and what I've worked on personally. And I'll probably keep building on the example that I did yesterday because it's so relevant to this. But I'd love to know what your learning and development challenge is. So do let me know, and I can potentially comment on your challenge and how you might be able to approach that in your own workplace. So let me know your challenge. I will put this into chat as we get into it. Okay, so we're going to look at 11 Agile HR design principles. As I said, this is what I've learned over the years, can really help you create great people practices in your organization. We're going to move at a fairly fast pace because there's short sessions today, but really happy to have a chat about your own challenges and your own situation at any time afterwards. So the first sounds a bit obvious, but it's being customer centric. But this means you need to think about what is the actual employee and business needs that we're solving for. And if I take us back to that example that I was just saying before, what is personal growth? There's a lot of assumptions that are out there around personal growth. A lot of people traditionally have linked it to getting a promotion or getting a pay rise. But when you actually go and speak to people, it can mean so many different things. It could mean working in a great environment. It could be being part of a great team. It could be having an opportunity to be part of new projects, learning new skills, looking at building new solutions for the customer. So we actually need to go out and find what is the true customer needs and start to develop based on that. Excellent. We've got one of your challenges have come in, which is the need to develop new ways of working. Yes, the hybrid model and build a strategy. Fantastic. We can touch into that. So this is really important. So when I first came to sort of discovered Agile as a way of working in my own HR and learning and development, I had been lucky enough to come into an organization that was working Agile. But I was challenged from word go. So what they asked me to do is they asked me to redesign performance and reward for a more agile ways of working. And so what I did is what we often do as HR and learning and development consultants. I went and looked at what the cool companies were doing. So Google, Facebook. I then went and interviewed some people to find out their opinions. And I looked at the engagement survey, and then I blueprinted a whole solution up front. And I took that to my sponsor and I said, oh, this is what you should do with your performance and reward. And what was interesting is the sponsor turned around and said, well, how do you know that's going to work? And should I just double check that we are all still online? Yeah, just I'm seeing different messages. So
Yes, here.
Yeah, we're all good. Okay, great. So the sponsor said, well, how do you know this is going to work? In my line of business, we test things, we validate it, and we get the data to make key decisions. And this is the thing. Just because you did a great learning and development solution at the last organization, around a leadership program or a great skills program, that doesn't mean this is going to necessarily work now where you are. And you need to validate it for your organization, for your culture, for your values. You might use a lot of the same principles, but you really need to test and validate for your environment. And that's my big message here. You can't just take what you've done before. You need to actually build the solution incrementally with your people and understand who the customer is. Yes, a great question. So do I mean customer for HR or customer for the company? I actually mean both, and I'm going to go into that next. But first of all, it's your customer. So employee and business needs. What is actually the problem that you're trying to solve? And if you think about our role, we are helping employees be great in their job so they then deliver value through to the end customer of the business. And that's a really important flow that we need to really understand and be part of. So yes, all your solutions also, you need to demonstrate what is the value that goes through to that end customer, just as much as what goes to our immediate customers, which is the employees and business stakeholders. So that nicely takes me into the next point, which is value. You need to define the value upfront for the challenge that you're going into. So first of all, what is the actual problem you're trying to solve? And so yesterday, when we were exploring personal growth, we did some design thinking to really kind of look into the challenge. And what we realized by looking at some personas and some experiences that people were going through in the organization is that that was a real problem at 1 to 2 years. So people, after being with the organization for a year, which was a very exciting first year, they developed a lot, they learnt a lot, they then weren't sure what were their opportunities, where could they go next? And that wasn't always wanting the promotion. It was how do they actually connect with different people in the organization to understand how they develop their skills more? How do they get involved in different projects? How do they actually maybe move into a different product and a different part of the business? So we actually really zeroed in on the problem. We then went and mapped out the value. So we said, well, what happens if we solve this problem? First of all, for the business, so the impact to the bottom line. For example, does this increase productivity? Then what is the value to the end customer? And we realized if people were developing and engaged and really feeling great in their job, they were having better customer relationships and their net promoter score would go up. We also wanted to see what's the value to employees. And this was a range of increased engagement, direct feedback. There was lots of metrics that we could tap into here. But also we realized it needed to be a range of solutions that people could tap into because it needed to be more personalized if employees were going to see the value. Yes, I think so. Anastasia, you've got a great comment here of a lot of employees expect to be trained. And this is the legacy that we have. It's also a thing of that traditionally learning has been created outside of the flow of work. So if we want people to leave their work and come and attend a training program, there's a lot of effort around that. It feels disconnected as well. So a lot of the solutions that we're finding coming out from the Agile space is how do we start to go much more to the point of need, much more to the pain point and where the problem is, and connect it much more to the flow of work. So a good example is a company in the UK. They did learning development and they had these great programs for managers, but everyone said they were too busy to attend the programs. They all wanted to be developed, but they were too busy. So they went and started to find out, well, what's going on for managers? And they found out that managers had problems, but they didn't see it as development needs. They saw it as problems to be solved. Oh, I've got to hire someone tomorrow and I don't know how to do it. I've got to give someone feedback tomorrow and I don't know how to do it. And when that problem came up, they instantly then and there wanted to learn something. And so they started to create learning that people could access at that point in time. So some digital learning, contact a coach, they even had some bite-sized sessions, but the idea was that they were being available much more at the time of need. And so this started to create an environment where people could solve their problems by accessing the learning much more on demand. And if you think about what's going on in our world, we watch Google, we watch YouTube. This is how we're learning in the flow. And the more we can connect the two, the more we can start to break down this legacy of, I need to get trained externally by somebody else. Okay, let's move on. And looking at the time, go to Chris. So the next one is innovate within constraints. So a lot in the world of HR learning and development, we often have some design things based on the constraints. So a great example is performance. Often performance systems have been created to ensure that we meet compliance or regulatory needs rather than the user experience. And we've often ended up with an outcome of what feels like tick the box, but actually was meant to support people to be great. A great one is mandatory personal development plans. So there's a good idea behind that. We wanted to develop everyone and make sure they got a development plan. But once it's mandatory, it feels much more like this tick box. We must do it. So how do we naturally flip that? Know your constraints, but innovate within them and design for the user experience first. The next one is we're wanting to look at co-create. So this is what kind of really got me into Agile in the world of HR and learning. So if I take you back to that example, I was asked to come in and redesign performance and reward. And I presented my blueprint and the sponsor said, well, how do you know this is going to work? You need to test and validate. And what that allowed me to do was go in and actually ask people to participate in small, safe experiments. And we went and looked at what is the best way to do feedback? What happens if we delink performance and reward? What does this look like for people? How does that help people? And that allowed me to gather data on what was the right changes to make. What was really interesting is when we then made some substantial changes 6 months later around bonuses and reward, people were co-creating the change with me. So I wasn't implementing the change onto them. They were already part of it. And they understood why we were making these changes. And it reflected their direct feedback. And this is so powerful, how you co-create change through an incremental development approach in your HR and learning and development. The next one is that incremental. So there has been a tradition of blueprinting solutions upfront in the world of HR and particularly learning and development. I did it for years. I ran big leadership programs, big learning solutions where I looked at some needs analysis at the start, what's needed for these people, but then I would design the whole project. And I would then schedule it into everyone's diaries. And yes, I would pilot at the start, but the pilot already had a huge amount of investment. I often had a tender. I already was working with a vendor, and I often had the CEO in the room, for the pilot. So even if the pilot didn't go well, I then was just tweaking what I had already created. There was no chance to sort of fail and start again. So this is true. How do you embrace much more of a prototype and test approach? Really validate that you're delivering against the need and then start to build the solution out. And you might go into one part of the business first, see if it works there, and then implement across. So you also start to prioritize where to go first and why. And as I said, build slices of value over a period of time. Next one is fight the process waste. So this links a little bit into what some of the things that we've been talking about, which is for learning and development solutions and HR solutions, we need to make it easy to get the job done. So if we create processes that feel like an add-on to people's work each day, they're less likely to engage with it. If it's a connection much more into the flow of work, it will feel quite natural to engage with it. And this is what we need to look at. So things like performance is a great example. So the more we add on to the conversations that are naturally happening in the organization around performance and feedback, the more it might feel like a task that they have to do or a tick box, as opposed to really enabling them to get the job done. And so this means, how do we look at building lightweight solutions that really fits the process of work rather than something extra that people need to do and takes them out of getting the job done? A big theme around Agile, of course, is transparency. So how do we make our information transparent to enable real-time decisions? This is quite different world for HR because up until now, a lot of things that we've worked on have often been kept secret. So talent is a great example. I used to run talent processes and we didn't really talk about it with the business. We need to move away from that. By sharing information, people can make real-time decisions and be an adult in how they approach their decisions. The next one is evidence-based, and we've talked a lot about this. Get the data and validate the problem and then start to move forward. This also helps you manage your hippos, which are huge influences over HR products and projects. So the highest paid person's opinion often really influences a whole solution design. The amount of times I was asked by a senior leader to create a training program because people don't know what they're doing, where actually once you went and looked into the problem, it was because of the relationships in the team rather than the skills. So many times that was an issue. So go and get the data and work in an evidence-based way. And then that kind of flows into the last three. So the first is this trust. Treat people like adults that can make great decisions given the right information in a transparent environment. So build solutions that treats people as adults. Talk about what we want to see and how, the values and the culture as opposed to the list of the do's and don'ts. And as you're already getting a feel, it's about not having a one size fits all. So in the past, we used to roll out change in a big bang way, one size fits all standardized solution. And that even equaled things around concepts of equality and fairness. But actually, one size means that everyone gets something that doesn't quite fit for them. Now, I'm not saying you make individually personalized solutions, but you go and look at the segments of your workforce and create solutions that really help them be great in their job. And that all brings it into harness agile ways of working. So if you've already got agile ways of working happening in your business, you've got great performance conversations, you've got great feedback conversations. Tap into that and really build solutions that enable that to happen real time, rather than always thinking it's an add-on on top of how people are already working. And so the theme is help people be great in their job so they can deliver value through the business and, of course, to your end customer, which is what it's all about. Now, I'm very conscious that I've gone a bit over time, so I think we've got a few minutes for a question, or I'm very happy to go up and talk about someone's challenge and we can workshop that a bit more. But does anyone have a particular question you would like to ask now? And I'm very happy to explore that.
So no questions now. guys, remember that you can ask your questions in special chat for Natal. Natal, thank you for your interesting, amazing talk.
Not a problem. Fantastic to be here, and thanks for having me. And the sun is nearly up in Scotland, so it's good. All righty.
Okay, bye. Thank you so much.
All right, not a problem. Have a great day.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you, everybody.